Hello, I'm Craig Constantine. Welcome. This is the Podcaster Community Show, short conversations that are not just about podcasting, because I like to take the scenic route. Our guest today is Samantha Schuffenecker. Welcome, Samantha. How are you this afternoon?
Hi, Craig. I'm great.
We've, I do like to admit when I make mistakes. So we did this already. So congratulations on being the first person to ever be on the show twice. Even though the first one got deleted. I screwed up this. So we record these using Zencaster and uh, Zencaster, and there are other ones, Squadcast, Riverside, and I believe there's a fourth these days. They do the really neat magical thing of giving us the full quality WAV file from the guest side. So when we're done, I have high quality, better than what Samantha and I hear and see during the call. So I have better quality audio. But sometimes Zencaster and the others too have a little issue in Chrome and they have a little wrestling match, and I wound up recording from the wrong microphone. I had checked the drop down and it said that I was using my audio interface. And of course, what I hear in my ears is local from my local equipment. So it sounds great to me. Samantha's just like nodding along, like, I couldn't really hear you that well. But yeah, and at the end, I checked my audio file and it's complete crap off the mic, off my computer. I bring this up because before we pressed record today, we were talking about like the beginning aspects of starting out. Samantha is a self-professed beginner, but you've done the whole course, and I don't think you're a beginner at podcasting. But anyway, so I wanted to unpack all that because, like, yeah, I screw up too, and a lot of times I screw up and I leave it right in the show. But that one was such a train wreck; it was unusable. And I know that you're currently trying to decide what your title is, and then it's like, oh, everything's connected. If I can't figure out my title, I can't do my intro, and I can't do my artwork, and I can't. Samantha's nodding along. I could just talk for 20 minutes, I guess. So, what are your thoughts on the amount of, I was going to say the amount of suckage or the beginner's mindset that, like, is it what you were expecting? Like, were you expecting, okay, this is going to be rough? Or is it worse than rough? Like the whole journey to get from zero to podcast?
I wouldn't describe it as rough because I actually like throwing myself into situations that I'm not ready for. So that was actually a fun and exciting piece for me in that I can't remember what week it was, but I was just sitting there and I think we had just learned audio editing and I was so excited to get my hands on all the things. And I kept doing the steps before we were actually told to do the steps. So I just like dove right in and was watching YouTube videos and everything. And it's funny that you bring up the audio because I was really worried, I think last week or the week before, because basically my primary form of learning things right now is to download a podcast about the thing that I'm trying to figure out. So
Right.
I listen to all kinds of podcasts with different ideas of quality for each of them. And I was so worried that I had trained myself to forgive bad audio that I wouldn't recognize bad audio in my own recordings when they happen.
I'm going to
So I
guess that's
actually,
not actually a problem, right?
well, I don't know. I didn't notice that you weren't connected to your mic last time. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at.
You would have noticed when you opened the WAV file in your audio editor. I opened it up and I was like, what? I mean, it took like half a second. I was like, oh, crud. And then I'm like, well, maybe I can clean it up and leave it out there as a lesson, that you can. And I was like, no, I'm like, how could you even hear me? It was really bad. Um, yeah, editing. I haven't really lost my train of thought. Craig's brain freezes up when Craig talks about himself in third person when he has too many ideas in his head and he can't figure out which ones to say. I'm I love the fact that you're just like, "Oh, I'm throwing myself into it." And I'm wondering, so my read is most people who wind up being independent podcasters, they tend to have one thing about it that they love. And then there's some things about it that are like, yeah, I got to do that. And then there's like something that they hate. And for me, I hate editing. It has to do with the fact that I have really bad hearing. So if you ask Craig, what's it sound like? It's like, well, it sounds like I have hearing aids in. It does not sound the way you think it sounds. So I hate editing. I hate spending the time. I hate fiddling. I don't like, I'm a perfectionist. It's horrible. I'm understanding now that you actually enjoy the editing. Like that's a thing that you're drawn to. What? I don't mean to go like that's weird, but I'm just wondering like what is it about the editing that makes you want to? Is it just editing your own stuff, or is it? 'Cause I know you're volunteering for other podcasts. Like, is it editing anything? Is it the editing itself, or is it something about the content that you're editing, or what's up with that?
I think the first time I realized that this is kind of funny is I never realized that people were editing their audio or their podcast. I just thought people were having conversations and everybody was so well spoken. And
No, nobody does
part
it
of
that
it
way.
part of it was my own. I don't think I'm a great speaker, so part of it was just some relief that I could string a few sentences
Hmm.
together and cut the silence and produce something that I was proud of and work on my speaking at the same time. And the other thing was it just like opened up this whole creative aspect to podcasting that I had never thought about before. Do I think that I'm gonna do a really creative podcast with the one I'm thinking about right now? Probably not, but it just opened something in my brain that I hadn't really thought about before.
Hmm. You can have more than one podcast show.
I do know that.
Bicycle story. I have a good friend who used to own the bike store, owned it for many, many years. And I had bought a particular mountain bike and I rode it about 3,000 miles, no exaggeration. And it was like the ship of thieves. Like there was nothing left of the bike that was original. I kept like changing things. And it's a great guy, a little older than me, had glasses on. And I bring my bike in again, and he's like, kind of looks over his glasses at me, and he goes, "Craig, you can have more than one bicycle." And I had just never like, I was like, "Oh right," and then I went and bought another bicycle. So, um, there's something about what is it called? The simplicity that comes from complexity. So when you start something for the very first time, it's just rabbit holes everywhere, and everything is, oh my gosh, it's all and that's the beginner's mind. And it's really great if you can be really good at something and cultivate that mindset and do that intentionally. And then after a while, you begin to understand this is how things are done. This is what good looks like. This is what mastery looks like. And then things start to get simpler. And then it's what you can do once you understand and see how and why things can be simple that you can decide to tweak. So do you see yourself maybe like going really deep on editing, but then kind of like backing away from it and figuring out what the minimal amount of editing is that you can do? Because I'm wondering if do you feel like you've been drawn away from what originally brought you to podcasting by the excitement of editing?
I think so because uh, setting up interviews, doing host on mic things, recording the introduction are all more scary to me than editing is. So I can definitely,
Mm,
at some point I'm gonna have to say, this is the real point of the podcast is to talk to interesting people and get their stories out there, and that's what I need to focus on, and I need to cut the time I spend elsewhere.
mm. Yeah, I agree. I think you can. There's lots of places one can hide in podcasting. In host on mic stuff, I hide by not doing it. in the in this show, when I years ago when I first started doing interviews, I was like, well, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm pretty sure if I do like five of them, the fifth one will be better than the first one. They actually got worse. They went downhill for the first five, I think. Um, but it was much easier to look back and go, oh, that was so no, don't do that again, and move on to something else. So I think you have a good um, mindset or a good way of looking at it. Like, all right, I recognize that maybe I'm on a roller coaster over here playing with editing. It goes around in a big circle and it comes back to the same place. I'm gonna get back off. And now that I understand that, I'm gonna go do this other part of it. Um, yeah. What were there any other so if you show up for a podcasting course and you had the right attitude about like, okay, this is gonna be learning. I'm in, all in. Was there anything about it that surprised you, like pieces of podcasting? You were like, I did not expect to have to use crayons or something completely unexpected.
I I don't know. I think I think the editing piece was my aha moment.
Mm.
actually. But right now I'm trying to pick out, like, theme music and to so I didn't realize I would have to do that or think about that.
No, you don't have to, but yeah, it is
Yeah,
one of the
that's
things that they suggest doing. I don't. This show doesn't have any music. This show doesn't even have opening. Like, there's nothing. Um, yeah, but I'm not implying that you should do it my way either. Um, yeah. How many how many conversations have you done where you're the host or the interviewer, whichever terms you prefer to use? I'm not trying to put you on the
I've
spot. Just
I've done 5 now.
hmm.
Uh, I think well, 4 of them were technically practice interviews, but then I
If you're
realized, like,
recording, it
"Hey."
counts. What's the hardest part for you about, first of all, interviews or conversations?
Conversations, I guess.
Conversations.
Yeah.
And guess that makes you then the host as opposed to the interviewer, I'm guessing?
Mhm. Mhm.
Okay, which is the way I prefer to use the words. To me, an interview is something different. But anyway, so as the host, what's the hardest part, like in the whole, like from before you have the idea to talk to them, all the whole gamut of things wrapped around having that conversation. What's the hardest thing for you currently?
I think the hardest thing is to I probably overthinking this way too much, but figuring out the main points I'm trying to get out of the guest or the conversations that I wanna bring out, and, part of that might be that I don't have a fully fleshed idea of what the podcast is gonna be, but I know that that's gonna take some exploring and figure out what happens.
Because you can always delete the episode. Whoa, wait, start over. Doink, 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 doink. What So what's the challenge? I forget what week we're in. The course has been open like 10 weeks or something. Like it's been a whole month. What's the challenge on figuring out what the podcast is supposed to be? I mean, if you show up for a course to create a podcast, that means you've been thinking about it. So what are you stuck on?
Yeah, the thing that made the podcast real originally and made me sign up for the course was I had some success in playing golf last year, and I played in the U.S. Mid Amateur Championship, which is like the I think top 160 golfers in the world, and that tournament as well as other tournaments, I was just like I had an aha moment of competition now for me is not just about competition, it's also about connection. So I really wanted to bring out, showcase some conversations with those athletes. And when I really got into it, I was thinking, like when I went through and the list of the people that we want to interview and all that, I noticed that the people I really wanted to have conversation with were more than just that group of people. So I mean, maybe it is 2 podcasts that I need to create, I don't know. Um, but yeah.
Oh, you can call the show Samantha's Curiosity, and then anything fits in there. Like you could, I
That's actually
considered,
I actually thought about that, like, "Oh, it's the Shoop Show."
yeah, yeah, there's something to be said for that. There's a lot of things which begin with I don't mean meaningless, but begin with the title which doesn't pack the concept of the thing into the name. So like Sesame Street, right, is like what's that? I mean, if you know what Sesame Street is, you know all about it, but the title doesn't tell you anything all about what's going on in this children's television program. If you didn't know what Sesame Street was, I weep for you. But anyway, so you could just draw a line in the sand and say, I'm picking a title that doesn't actually intend to convey meaning. Um, so yeah. Hmm. How long do you think it's going to take you to figure out what your title is? And do you need a domain name or you?
Hey, I've taken too many akimbo classes to not see not see that that might be a sign of hiding as
Mm,
well. So,
mm. Well, I guess the question is, how long are you comfortable not publishing? At some point, part of the reason that I do this particular show with so little post production is because I don't want to wait. I want to like go, 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 go,
mm,
go. I want to not that I want to hurry up the conversations, but I don't want to be like, oh, I can only talk to one person a week, 52 people a year. I don't think so. I'm going to do 106 months. So like, why should I have to spend 4 hours around every half hour conversation? I have longer conversations, but then it's harder to get the guests to schedule their time. But anyway, zooming back out, maybe at some point you're just going to find, screw this, I'm just going to start because you want to publish the content. But it sounds like you're still feeling like the balance is currently like it's okay to be thinking about what is the show about. Um, yeah.
yeah, I think I'm getting closer there because I really, right now, I just want to I have a list of people that I can easily start interviewing and I just want to go. And I think, right, I just recorded my first one last week, I think. And I'm at the point where I need to do an introduction to it. And once I sit down and do the introduction to it, the title might come to me. I feel like just doing more of those will help for sure.
Yeah. Cool. I'm just thinking like, oh, I could say lots of things, but I'll let you like don't mess with the soup, Craig. Like let people like Samantha's like, I stirred it. It's good. We leave it on simmer for a little bit longer. Any let's go a different direction. Any words of wisdom for people out there who might be listening who haven't even like they're just too scared to even record anything, like just because there are people who listen to the show who consider themselves podcast creators, but that means they're just thinking about it like, oh, I think maybe I could make a thing. So you're definitely further along than those people, right? So what are some things that you can think of looking back?
Mm. I mean, I'm barely further along than those people. So I definitely believe if I can do it, they can do it. But one of my favorite things about being in these workshops is I just like reading and responding to other people's posts and what they're thinking about their ideas. And I wish there was like full time cheerleader for some of these things. So, um, just to anybody thinking about doing a podcast, you can do it and start somewhere.
Mm. Yeah. What's that Chinese proverb? If there's somewhere you need to be, you need to start walking like
Mm.
now, it's just like there's also the other one, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step and sometimes ends very badly is the also other, but that's the Western pessimistic spin on that. What else? What else comes to mind? Give you a chance to do a little conversation from the host side.
Well, what's cool about podcasting and is that even if you do all the podcasting things and you don't come out with a podcast, like I've found that going through those steps leads to some development professionally or personally. Like you can't hide from that. So even if you don't come out with a podcast, you're still going to come out with that.
I would definitely agree. Any last parting questions? Is like, yeah, another minute or three, we could easily go.
Well, I guess before we jumped on, we did a deep dive into your process on titles and sinking into that.
That
Is
is
there
a
anything
statement. Yes, we did do that.
is there anything you wanna share? That would be helpful.
I'll be nice. I won't answer that with no. So I'm a process. Not everybody knows me, knows that I have processes for everything. And I was sharing with Samantha that the other project, which is called Movers Mindset, didn't start out with that name. And I got to a point where I wanted to change the name. And then I was like doing exactly what Samantha was describing she's doing for her show, trying to figure out what's the title? How do I name the title? And I was sharing for me, I used a spreadsheet, but anything that you can take notes with would work. And I just would take time pretty much every day, sometimes an hour, sometimes just a few minutes. And I would just scan down the list of these names that I'd written down, like A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And I got in the habit of like, first thing I would do with it is take the name and search Google. And like, if there was something that was confusingly similar, I would make a note like, can't use this. That's another podcast or whatever. Sometimes I'd find something and it's like, oh, that's a brand of shoes. That's probably different enough. And I would just make little notes. Is the name confusing? Is there anything like it? Is there literally a podcast with that name? Is the .com available? And I just kept making notes, and I would just go around and around, and I kept rearranging my worksheet. Um, and I got that idea from somebody else that I know in another context, who suggested just let it simmer, but make sure you're not losing. Don't be like stuck on the same train of thought. So that was the magic sauce for me, was to just like go around and around and around and think. And eventually I got down to a couple of names that I was like, oh, these are really cool. And the domain name is available. And then I started like asking other people like, okay, I got these two names. What do you think? And then I felt like when I was asking people for help, I felt like I had a pretty good idea. And then if they went, I'm like, okay, maybe not that one. So that was my process, was just let it simmer. So I think you're on the right track. So that'd be my suggestions for. I think the title is really hard. I think it's easier to figure out what you want to do than it is to figure out what to call it. My only caution with titles is if you have to explain the title of your show, it's not a good title. The title has to just make sense, because otherwise, your elevator speech, which has 3 sentences in it, you're going to spend the first sentence explaining the title of the thing, which is what
Mhm.
happened with what the original show title. But that's my thoughts on picking titles. All right. Well, as much as I dislike burning time talking when I have a guest, but cool. All right, Samantha. It was a pleasure to get a chance to talk to you again. That was nice, because now we've had 2 conversations, even though the first one I screwed up horribly. So thank you so much for taking the time to come back and help me fix my mistake. Thank you.
Thanks. I had fun in both conversations.
Hello, I'm Craig Constantine. Welcome. This is the Podcaster Community Show, short conversations that are not just about podcasting, because I like to take the scenic route. Our guest today is Samantha Schuffenecker. Welcome,